Sometimes the best deals come with the worst consequences. I learned that lesson the hard way during what was supposed to be my healing retreat in the Colorado mountains. After months of therapy sessions following the accident that claimed my sister, I needed solitude. The city noise had become unbearable, every car horn a reminder of screeching brakes and shattered glass. The cabin listing appeared on my laptop screen like a divine intervention. Rustic log construction, panoramic mountain views, complete isolation for just $70 per night. The photos showed a cozy interior with a stone fireplace, modern amenities, and floor-to-ceiling windows that promised breathtaking sunrise vistas. Reviews were minimal but glowing, though I noticed they all mentioned the same phrase about following the caretaker's instructions exactly. Booking happened instantly. No communication with the host, just an automated confirmation email containing check-in details and a warning about cell service being non-existent at that elevation. Perfect, I thought. Complete disconnection from everything that reminded me of before. The drive up the winding mountain road took 3 hours longer than expected. My GPS lost signal 20 miles from civilization, leaving me to navigate using printed directions that led deeper into wilderness I hadn't known existed. Pine trees towered overhead, their branches creating a green canopy so thick that afternoon felt like twilight. The air grew thinner with each switchback, making my ears pop and my breathing shallow. When I finally reached the cabin, something felt immediately wrong. It sat in a clearing that seemed too perfectly circular, surrounded by trees that all leaned slightly inward, as if watching the structure. The building itself matched the photos exactly, but the silence was absolute. No birdsongs, no insect buzzing, not even wind through the pines. Just an oppressive quiet that made my footsteps on the gravel driveway sound like gunshots. The key waited under a ceramic owl by the front door, its painted eyes seeming to track my movements. Inside, the cabin exceeded expectations. Hardwood floors gleamed under exposed beam ceilings. The kitchen boasted granite countertops and stainless steel appliances, and that promised fireplace dominated the living room with its massive stone hearth. Everything looked recently cleaned, almost surgically sterile. My bedroom upstairs featured the advertised mountain views through windows so clean they might have been open air. The bed was made with military precision, white linen stretched tight enough to bounce coins, but something about the room felt staged, like a movie set waiting for actors who would never arrive. Unpacking took minutes. I'd brought minimal clothing and supplies, planning to spend most of my time hiking and reading. The small stack of books I'd brought looked pathetic on the nightstand, inadequate weapons against the crushing solitude I'd specifically sought, but now questioned. Hunger drove me to explore the kitchen more thoroughly. The refrigerator hummed quietly, its interior mostly empty except for basic condiments and a note taped to the inside door. My name, Michael, was written across the envelope in careful block letters. Inside, typed instructions on official letterhead. Welcome to Pine Ridge Cabin. Your safety depends on following these rules precisely. Rule 1. Never answer the door after 10 p.m., regardless of who claims to be outside. Rule 2. If you hear knocking from inside the walls, ignore it completely. Do not investigate. Rule 3. The basement door remains locked for structural reasons. Do not attempt entry under any circumstances. Rule 4. If you see lights moving through the forest at night, close all curtains and avoid windows until dawn. Rule 5. The attic access panel must never be disturbed. Strange sounds from above are normal settling. Rule 6. If you find additional notes that contradict these instructions, burn them immediately in the fireplace. Rule 7. Emergency contact information is programmed into the landline phone. Use only for genuine emergencies. The note was signed by someone named J. Harrison, caretaker. No phone number or additional contact information appeared anywhere on the paper. I read it twice, trying to determine if this was some elaborate prank or legitimate safety information. The clinical tone suggested the latter, but the content felt lifted from a horror movie. My rational mind, trained by years in accounting to analyze and categorize information, rejected the supernatural implications. These were probably precautions against wildlife, trespassers, or structural hazards. Mountain cabins often came with unique dangers that city dwellers wouldn't anticipate. The first evening passed peacefully. I cooked a simple dinner, built a fire in that impressive fireplace, and read until exhaustion made the words blur together. The silence had stopped bothering me, becoming almost meditative. Perhaps this retreat would provide the healing I desperately needed. Sleep came easily in the mountain air, deep and dreamless, until something woke me at 2:17 a.m. according to the bedside clock. A sound had pulled me from unconsciousness, but I couldn't identify what. I lay still, listening to the absolute quiet that felt heavier than before, as if the very air had thickened. Then I heard it, a soft tapping from somewhere inside the walls. Tap, 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 pause, tap, 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 pause. The rhythm was too regular to be settling wood or small animals. It sounded deliberate, almost like code. Rule 2 echoed in my memory. Ignore knocking from inside walls completely. But curiosity proved stronger than caution. I slipped out of bed and followed the sound to its source, the wall behind the headboard. Pressing my ear against the wooden panels, I could hear it clearly now. Not random tapping, but a pattern, repeating every 30 seconds. The sound moved as I listened, traveling along the wall toward the corner, then disappearing entirely. I waited for several minutes, but it didn't return. Eventually, I convinced myself it had been pipes expanding and contracting with temperature changes. Old buildings made strange noises, especially in mountain climates with dramatic temperature swings. Morning brought brilliant sunshine through those panoramic windows and renewed confidence in my practical explanations. The tapping had obviously been normal house sounds amplified by the strange acoustics of an unfamiliar space. I made coffee and sat on the deck, watching sunrise paint the mountains in shades of gold and pink that no photograph could capture. The day improved my mood dramatically. I hiked forest trails that seemed to appear and disappear randomly, following deer paths through stands of aspen whose leaves created a golden ceiling overhead. The exercise felt good, burning off nervous energy that had accumulated during months of therapy sessions and sleepless nights. But as afternoon shadows lengthened, returning to the cabin brought back that inexplicable unease. The building looked different somehow, as if it had shifted slightly during my absence. Windows that had been bright with reflected sunlight now seemed darker, more secretive. The ceramic owl by the door appeared to have moved, though that was clearly impossible. Inside, everything looked exactly as I'd left it, yet something felt wrong. The air smelled different, carrying a faint metallic tang that hadn't been there before. I checked every room systematically, looking for signs of intrusion, but found nothing disturbed. Even my books remained stacked in precisely the same order on the nightstand. Dinner preparations were interrupted by a discovery that made my blood run cold. The basement door, which I'd noticed but ignored during my initial exploration, now had fresh scratches around the lock, deep gouges in the wood that definitely hadn't been there that morning. The scratches looked like claw marks, but far too large to have been made by any animal I could imagine. Rule 3 had specifically mentioned that door remaining locked for structural reasons, but these marks suggested something had been trying to get out rather than in. I tested the handle, finding it secure, then pressed my ear against the wood. Complete silence from below, but somehow that felt more ominous than noise would have been. The landline phone, which I'd located earlier on the kitchen counter, showed no dial tone when I lifted it. Either the service was down or the line had been cut. My cell phone remained useless, showing no signal bars despite holding it at various locations throughout the cabin. I was effectively isolated with no means of communication. As darkness fell, I became acutely aware of how exposed those large windows made me feel. Anyone or anything outside could observe my every movement while remaining invisible in the forest shadows. I closed all the curtains as Rule 4 suggested, transforming the open, airy cabin into a closed box that felt increasingly claustrophobic. The fireplace provided both light and psychological comfort, its dancing flames the only movement in an otherwise static environment. I tried to read but found myself constantly glancing up, listening for sounds that never came. The silence had become oppressive again, weighing down on me like a physical presence. At exactly 10:15 p.m., someone knocked on the front door. 3 slow, deliberate raps that echoed through the cabin like gunshots. My heart rate spiked as Rule 1 flashed through my mind. Never answer the door after 10 p.m., regardless of who claimed to be outside. But who would be visiting this remote location at such an hour? The knocking repeated, more insistent this time. A voice called out, muffled by the heavy wooden door but clearly human. "Hello? Is anyone home? I'm lost and my car broke down. I just need to use your phone." Every instinct screamed at me to help. The voice sounded genuinely distressed, belonging to what might have been a middle-aged woman. But Rule 1 had been explicit about not answering, and something about the situation felt staged. How had this person found the cabin in complete darkness? The nearest road was miles away, and the path here wasn't marked. "Please," the voice continued. "I've been walking for hours. I just need help." I crept to the window beside the door and carefully lifted one corner of the curtain. The porch light illuminated nothing but empty wooden boards. No person, no shadow, no indication that anyone stood outside, yet the voice had definitely come from that direction. The knocking came again, harder now, making the door shake in its frame, but still no one visible on the porch. Fear replaced sympathy as I realized that whatever was outside wasn't human, despite the convincing voice. I backed away from the door, my hands trembling as I double-checked the deadbolt. "I know you're in there," the voice said, and now it sounded different, lower, rougher, with an undertone that raised the hair on my arms. "I can smell your fear. Just open the door, Michael. We need to talk." It knew my name. Whatever was out there knew who I was, though I'd told no one about this trip except my therapist, and she certainly hadn't shared my location with anyone. The voice continued speaking, but the words became increasingly distorted, as if the speaker's mouth was changing shape. After what felt like hours but was probably only minutes, the presence outside departed. I knew it was gone because the oppressive feeling that had pressed against the walls suddenly lifted, leaving behind normal nighttime quiet. But sleep was impossible after that encounter. I spent the rest of the night huddled by the fireplace, feeding logs to the flames and watching shadows dance on the walls. Every creak, every settling sound made me jump. Dawn couldn't come fast enough. Sunlight revealed no evidence of the previous night's visitor. No footprints on the porch, no disturbance in the gravel driveway, nothing to suggest anyone had been there at all. But the experience had been too vivid to dismiss as imagination or nightmare. I needed to leave. Whatever was happening at this cabin, it was beyond my ability to handle or understand. But when I tried to start my car, the engine only clicked. The battery was completely dead, though it had been fine the day before. Popping the hood revealed that someone or something had cut through several wires, disabling the vehicle entirely. Panic set in as I realized the extent of my isolation. No working car, no phone service, no way to call for help. The nearest neighbor was probably miles away through difficult forest terrain. I was trapped here with whatever had visited the night before. The day passed slowly as I tried to repair the car with limited tools and knowledge. The cut wires were too damaged to splice back together, and I lacked the materials for proper repairs. As afternoon wore into evening, I accepted that I would be spending at least one more night in the cabin. This time I prepared more thoroughly. I dragged heavy furniture against the front door, creating a barricade that would at least slow down any intruder. All windows were not only curtained, but blocked with whatever materials I could find. The fireplace poker became my weapon of choice, though I doubted its effectiveness against whatever had spoken with that inhuman voice. The second night brought new horrors. The tapping inside the walls returned, but now it came from multiple locations simultaneously. Soft knocking echoed from the bedroom, kitchen, and living room walls all at once, creating a cacophony of mysterious communication. The sounds followed no pattern I could discern, sometimes stopping abruptly only to resume minutes later from a different location. Around midnight, I heard footsteps on the roof, heavy, deliberate steps that moved from one end of the building to the other, before stopping directly above where I sat. Something was up there, pacing back and forth like a caged animal. The ceiling creaked under its weight, and occasionally I heard what sounded like scratching or scraping against the shingles. Then the lights in the forest began, dozens of them moving between the trees like handheld flashlights, but too bright and too steady to be artificial illumination. They danced through the darkness in patterns that hurt to follow, weaving hypnotic spirals that seemed designed to draw watchers outside. I kept the curtains closed as Rule 4 demanded, but the light bled through the fabric, painting everything in strange, shifting colors. Sleep was impossible under these conditions. I sat by the dying fire, poker in hand, listening to the symphony of impossible sounds surrounding the cabin. Whatever forces controlled this place were growing bolder, testing my defenses and my sanity with increasing aggression. The third day brought a discovery that shattered my remaining composure. While searching for additional tools to repair my car, I found a loose floorboard in the kitchen that concealed a hidden space beneath. Inside were dozens of notebooks, all filled with handwritten accounts from previous cabin guests. The entries painted a terrifying picture. Guest after guest had experienced similar phenomena: the knocking, the nocturnal visitors, the mysterious lights. But their stories progressed beyond mine, describing escalating encounters that grew more violent and supernatural with each passing night. The final entries in several notebooks were nearly illegible, written in shaking hands by people clearly driven to the edge of madness. One notebook belonged to someone named Sarah Chen, dated just 3 months earlier. Her final entry read, "Day 7, they're inside now. I can hear them moving through the walls, but they're not hiding anymore. The basement door is opening by itself. I think they were always down there, waiting. If anyone finds this, don't stay past the third night." That's when they stopped playing games. My hands shook as I read entry after entry describing the same pattern. 3 nights of escalating activity. Then something changed. Something that made grown adults abandon their belongings and flee into the wilderness. rather than face what came next. I was already on night 3. Panic drove me to desperate action. Using every tool I could find, I attempted to force start the car, bypass the damaged electrical system, anything to escape before darkness fell. But the vehicle was thoroughly disabled, and my mechanical knowledge was inadequate for the repairs needed. As sunset approached, I made a crucial decision. Rather than barricade myself inside the cabin again, I would hide in the forest. Whatever haunted this place seemed focused on the building itself. If I could survive one night outdoors, perhaps morning would bring rescue or at least a clearer path to safety. I gathered supplies, water, food, warm clothing, and the fireplace poker. The notebooks went into my backpack as evidence of what happened here, assuming I survived to share their contents. As the last daylight faded, I slipped out the back door and disappeared into the tree line. The forest at night was a different world entirely. Every shadow concealed potential threats. Every sound made me freeze with terror, but it felt safer than the cabin, which now glowed with those impossible lights moving behind every window despite my having left no illumination inside. From my hiding place behind a fallen log 50 yards from the clearing, I watched the building transform. The lights moved with purpose now, no longer random, but following patterns that suggested intelligence. Shapes passed by the windows, tall and angular and definitely not human. The front door opened and closed repeatedly, as if something was entering and leaving in search of its missing prey. Then I heard my name being called, not from the cabin but from multiple locations throughout the forest. Different voices, some familiar and some alien, all calling Michael in tones ranging from seductive to threatening. The sound seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere, creating an acoustic maze designed to draw me out of hiding. One voice made my blood freeze. It was my sister's voice, clear and unmistakable despite her having been dead for 8 months. "Michael, where are you? I've been looking for you. Come home, please. I'm scared and I need you." The psychological torture was exquisite in its cruelty. Every fiber of my being wanted to respond, to run toward that beloved voice and embrace the sister I'd failed to save. But rational thought prevailed. She was gone, and whatever was using her voice was not her. The calls continued through the night, cycling through voices of family members, friends, even my therapist, each one perfectly mimicked, each one designed to exploit my deepest emotional vulnerabilities. But I remained hidden, teeth chattering from cold and fear, waiting for dawn. As the first gray light appeared in the eastern sky, the voices stopped. The lights in the cabin went dark. An unnatural silence settled over the forest, more complete than any quiet I'd ever experienced. Whatever forces controlled this place had returned to their daytime dormancy. I waited until full sunrise before emerging from hiding. The cabin looked normal again, just an innocent mountain retreat with no sign of the previous night's supernatural activity. But I wasn't fooled. The building was a trap, and I'd been lucky to escape its third night escalation. The hike down the mountain was treacherous but necessary. Following the winding road on foot, I eventually reached the main highway where a passing trucker agreed to give me a ride to the nearest town. I called police from there, but their investigation found nothing unusual about the cabin. The notebooks I'd taken as evidence had somehow vanished from my backpack during the night in the forest. The official report listed me as a mentally unstable individual who'd suffered a breakdown due to grief and isolation. The cabin's owners, when contacted, expressed concern for my well-being, but denied any knowledge of supernatural activity or previous guest complaints. The notebooks, they claimed, had never existed, but I know what I experienced during those 3 nights. I know that some places exist at the intersection of our world and something else, something that feeds on human fear and desperation. The Mountain Pine Ridge cabin continues to operate, continues to offer impossibly low rates to desperate travelers seeking isolation and healing. I've tried to warn others, posting reviews on travel sites that are mysteriously deleted within hours. The listing itself has changed slightly, now emphasizing the peaceful solitude and complete disconnection from modern life. New photos show the same pristine interior, the same panoramic mountain views, the same ceramic owl by the front door with its painted eyes that seem to follow you. Sometimes I search online for news reports about missing persons in that area, hikers who vanished without trace or travelers who never reached their destinations. The numbers are higher than they should be for such a remote location, but each case is explained away by natural hazards, wild animals, or simple human error. I never found out what lurked in that basement, or what would have happened if I'd stayed for a 4th night. Some knowledge is too dangerous to pursue, some mysteries better left unsolved, but sometimes in the darkest hours before dawn, I hear that tapping in my apartment walls. Soft, rhythmic, patient knocking that sounds almost like communication from something that followed me home.